You're acting like you just don't want to do the podcast right now.
No, I just don't want to edit a podcast.
Well, we never edit, and we
no,
never
you
will.
never edit.
We shouldn't edit. We should not edit. We should never edit. I don't care if I get up in the middle of recording to like go to the bathroom, and you can hear the flushing on the mic. We should never edit. You are putting too much pressure on yourself. Never edit this show. Never put any effort into this show, because it's clear that despite how bad we are at podcasting, how many mistakes we make, freaks keep listening to this.
Yeah, and with that intro, I'll edit in the theme song right here.
Again, people gobble it up. We put our we put the thing in the content machine, and it splurts out like a howitzer. Yeah. And people dig it up.
Which on that note, I'd like to thank our listeners. We're about to hit 1,000 streams.
Woo! We did it.
We'll do the confetti.
Yeah. We should get a soundboard.
Yeah, we should get a soundboard.
We should just give up on all this politics crap and become like... You've been in Philly for a while. Have you listened to Preston and Steve yet?
No.
Oh my god. They're the best. They do the Bizarre File, where they read like stories about like anything like weird.
Well, Larry King just died, so maybe we'll just take his job.
Rest in peace.
Rest in peace, Larry King.
That is sad. We love it, or we are very upset when a member of the tribe dies.
Okay.
Or any famous person.
Yeah, I was gonna say people dying is generally not good.
But what are we here to talk about today for our episode of that we might get 1,000 streams during it.
Yeah, we're like 1 or 2 away, so.
Yeah, I want to meet the 1,000 people that listen, because obviously I don't know 1,000 people, and you don't know 1,000 people, so that means there's a lot of random people listening to this show.
Yeah, shout out to our listener in France. I may have said it before, but yeah, thank you. Thank you for listening.
Yes.
Listener in Malaysia and Britain. We've got a few in Australia.
Quantico, Virginia.
You out there in Brazil, you too.
I got my eye on you, Virginia.
Yeah, shout out to our international audience and the CIA.
What? I feel bad for if a CIA agent has to listen to this.
Yeah, imagine if that was your assignment and you just have to sit and listen.
To undergraduate students.
Yeah.
Podcast. Are you going to edit? Are you going to edit that out?
Yeah, I'm gonna edit that out.
No, leave it in. We do everything live here. Yeah, we should just get a soundboard and... Okay, all right. One thing I did say I was going to address. People that spend too much time on Twitter were very upset with me that I made a dig at Anna Khachiyan and accused her of being one of those leftists that like just wants Medicare for all and to say slurs. She's not a leftist. She doesn't claim to be a leftist. I guess I was confusing her with other annoying women on Twitter. I think that while I should apologize for making a mistake, I think that if you cared about my mistake, you are a bigger loser than I am.
Yeah, I think as much as I like to say that Sam was wrong, I think that if you know enough to correct him, you need to do some self-reflection about your Twitter habits.
Yeah. If you're that invested in the Red Scare podcast, you have a problem. And also, I said that Angela Merkel isn't a conservative, which isn't true. She leads the Conservative Party of Germany. Internationally, she is like a liberal. She believes in liberal institutions like the EU. It's kind of like her bread and butter. But fact remains, I was incorrect. But also, is it not useful to advance our goals politically? Should we not point out, blur the distinction between liberals and conservatives and point out, like, yes, Ronald Reagan was, in his belief of free markets and yada yada, a liberal, you know?
Yeah, so I think that gets to the interesting question about political delineations and like this sort of like how we address different ideologies. And I think that in a lot of cases, it's okay to lump them together when you're discussing practically what the outcomes are. So I suppose that lumping Angela Merkel in with like neoliberals would be, that makes sense whether or not she's actually part of like a neoliberal nominal party or whatnot. It makes sense if the practical outcomes of her policies are essentially neoliberalism.
Yeah, yeah.
And then it would be okay to lump her in with that group. But I think that you also need to, when discussing it, put a finer point on the distinctions between these ideologies where they do emerge. But I think in the case where you referred to her as a conservative and that nominally being her
Yeah,
political leaning, that makes sense.
I just think, all right, first of all, I made an error. I'm not like, but upon reflection, I'm not playing 4D chess is what I'm saying and trying to like be like, actually I'm a genius. But yeah, sure, I made a mistake, whatever. But I mean, while we should be on the subject and be like, actually, when you look at what we believe in and want the world to be in like the next few years, it is advantageous of us to call Ted Cruz a liberal and call Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden conservatives. I think, if we have to wage war on, the ruling class uses its own vocabulary, calling Joe Biden a liberal. Well, liberalism is like associated with like goodness. We need to fight back against that. We need to use their own language against them. I think that's a good like rhetorical strategy.
I would agree to some point. I think that when it comes down to it, what really just you need to call things as they are. Referring to people by titles they normally wouldn't go by in American politics, I think runs the risk of alienating people, like calling Ted Cruz a liberal or like calling Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden a conservative. I think would confuse a lot of people, and so I would once again draw the distinction of like intent.
Yeah, sure, whatever. I mean, like
use
if I
the
were
terms with purpose.
if I was on NPR, I probably wouldn't do that. But the hold NPR has on people, I think, is a good example. Like
Big public radio.
believing that, yeah. Well, look at all these people that since Biden got the nomination have been pushing the narrative that he's the next FDR, and like on paper it might appear that way, but in materially that's like not the case. I think that strengthens my point that you need to like reject these labels. And I just remembered what I had for the podcast topic suggestion. I guess I'll just ask you. I'll just shoot from the hip. I think now that the Trump presidency is over, I want to ask you. We might have dwelled a little bit deeper into this in the last two episodes because we talked all about the Capitol insurrection. But how damaging do you think his 4 years were to liberalism? Like the Trump movement, the Trump government, because remember, he governed pretty much like your typical president. So, but long-term ramifications, how damaging do you think he was to like the cause of like neoliberalism, as just to say the ideology of the American ruling class, your Ronald Reagans and your Bill Clintons?
I think he was damaging more so to the support of it than the actual policy or like the policy process in creating like neoliberalism. Because I think he actually, if you look at like globalization as sort of the setting for modern neoliberalism and like the spread of global capitalism, I think you'll see that Trump's trade war, a lot of his shutting down alliances, a lot of very isolationist, almost Monroe Doctrine-esque foreign policy choices did actually damage the neoliberal project. He withdrew from treaties. He tried to renegotiate trade deals, uh, all that sort of thing. And I think that was a step away from like this idea of like the international and like America's international presence. However, what we have seen in basically day one of a Joe Biden presidency is like the rollback of a lot of these things that Trump did. Like, again, he immediately re entered the Paris Climate Accord, repealed the Muslim ban. He's just renewed the New START nuclear arms treaty, rejoining the World Health Organization. Yeah, he just basically kept rolling these things back that Trump had done. I mean, we haven't heard much on the trade war yet, but it's all going to depend on what the stance Biden administration takes on China.
Well, I personally think one of Trump's biggest legacies is that now every president is going to every politician, really every elected official, is going to have to try to take a tough on China approach. Um, Certainly every president. I think Biden now has to. Um, I wouldn't go as far as to say we're emerging into a second Cold War, but I don't think that someone could campaign on China is our friend
No,
anymore.
and I think that's not a good thing. If we look at the Cold War, the U.S. and the USSR were similar powers. I mean, U.S. was bigger than the USSR, but ultimately, when it came down to it, like they both had like the capacity to be world powers. Granted, the United States did have much more industrial capital. After all, half the Soviet Union was destroyed by World War II.
Mm-hmm.
But again, these are measurable powers. A Cold War between the United States and China is not going to be comparable in 20 years. I mean, China is on not quite a command and control system, but it's state capitalism. And the fact that they have, I think, what is it now, 1.2 billion people,
See
and
it.
their markets are expanding. Actually, China was the only country this year to have a GDP growth
Yeah,
of like
yeah,
2.5%, which is greater than the US has any given year.
yeah. They're stabilizing. Like it's no longer like insanely high. It's becoming more like
Yeah.
stable.
Yeah, but it's the fact that China can grow at this extraordinary rate. It's a massive country, far bigger than the United States. Their industrial capital, or like the industrial capacity, is exploding. If we were to get into a second Cold War, I do not think the United States could win. And as much as the United States would love to play tough on China and thinking that we are like the international hegemon, a Cold War between the United States and China would not end well, because as much as China is reliant on exporting things to the United States, the US is very reliant on Chinese exports to uphold our standard of living.
Yeah, yeah. That's why I always say when people think like the possibility of like some sort of conflict with China, like militarily or like is like stupid because the economies are right now are so intertwined that like there would never be like serious conflict.
No, and that was the we saw it with the trade war even. The minute you announce tariffs, the stock market starts to plunge. I think that honestly, we could have had extraordinary economic growth in the first 3 Trump years if he hadn't done the trade war. I think that sort of hindered like the
Yeah,
economic growth
yeah,
that was
and
handed to him.
probably turned a lot of people against him, a lot of farmers against him.
Yeah, and it forced us to roll back into like subsidized agriculture and funding a lot of these different programs that, well, here I'll say this. If you are under any illusion that the United States is a free market, you should look at the agricultural sector and how it's all propped up on like federal subsidies, price fixing. It's insane. It's like 2 steps away from a command and control economy.
That could be a larger question of like, do free markets actually exist under capitalism? Because I'd say like, if there's anything U.S. history can teach us, it's that it's all dependent upon laissez-faire, genuine free markets quickly turned into like monopolies, and markets were like spiraling out of control, and the U.S. has to like have a government that manages it and regulates it and bails it out when inevitably when bubbles burst and things like that.
Yeah, no, and I mean that's
That's why
always
like anarcho-capitalism is the silliest ideology in the world.
I mean, if you look at capitalism, what is the purpose of capitalism? It's the accumulation of capital, the
Yeah.
concentration of capital. It's bound to monopolize. It's bound to like reach into the same hands. And I think what we've seen with sort of globalization and the whole neoliberal project of lowering tariffs, opening markets, and all of that is this like concentration in the elites and like the elite elites. And yeah, I think that that is ultimately going to be one of the effects of like the continuation of these policies is as much as welfare by the Biden administration can help support the poor off of starvation wages, they're not going to get much farther than that, and we're going to see the continued increase of inequality.
Oh yeah. Oh, for sure. For sure. Yeah. Um. Uh. So. I'm just completely drawing a blank. Back. Back to Back to the future of liberalism. It seems like now, thanks to like this emergent revolutionary part of the Republican base, is that now like the long term goals of neoliberalism, like as Hillary Clinton literally described herself, completely open borders, like the free flow of like goods and labor.
Yeah.
That like is no longer like viable. And well, I shouldn't say that. I think that is like, but they, it seems like democratically that vision is impossible. So are we facing down the barrel of a gun where capital and we'll have to confront democracy?
Yeah, I think that's going to be a problem, and we've had this discussion before, especially when it comes to like U.S. industrial jobs and like factory jobs. If you look at like coal mines, those jobs aren't coming back.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
it's the exported jobs I don't think are coming back, but the voter interest wants them to.
Yes,
And we're running into that sort of block of where
same thing with open borders.
exactly where it's open borders would ultimately be beneficial, I think, for a lot of people, especially the capital owning class. But it is against the interest of enough people that they create a voting bloc that would oppose it. And I think what this sort of comes to is if we look at the perception of globalization over like the last 20 years, even, you see like early 2000s, you have a lot of people like Thomas Friedman saying that globalization is some unstoppable force. Uh, States are eventually going to disappear, like their power is going to start fading away, and eventually we'll be left with this like global cosmopolitan society. And for a time, that actually seemed pretty true, and that's sort of the presumption that people were working under. But then you started to see these jobs leaving the United States, and rather than like the profit coming to like return to the people that lost their jobs in any actual way, you just basically saw it again get further concentrated in like the upper class. And so rather than directing sort of ire at this system of exploitation, how the jobs are being exported and like the profits are going elsewhere, you instead see it aimed at the like actual process of exporting the jobs. And so then we basically get to the Trump era where this it becomes electorally viable to say, I'm going to bring the factories back, these jobs that like we can perform elsewhere for less money, more efficiently, all of that, things that offer benefits. It's
Yeah,
it's seen as a bad thing. It's because the American people are not reaping the benefits in the way that they could in a true globalized society. And with Trump's message, you see this actual rejection, very poignant rejection of globalization, of free trade, of these neoliberal institutions, these neoliberal regimes in the international community.
Yeah, and I think you and I have already made our opinions clear on like the idea of the Republican Party becoming like a Nas Bowl, quasi like fascist. We've already said that like Herrenvolk democracy is like laughable.
Yeah, no,
And
it's nationalism. It's going to become economic nationalism.
yes, well, that's what I'm like. Things that Trump campaigned on are definitely going to like can't go away. Like the strong border stance, the anti-immigrant stance, I think is definitely going to be there to stay, and some other things, and it'll end up being totally like cultural bullshit. That's like the damnedest thing. Like it won't actually like materially like improve anybody's life, and we just see when Trump does act, when he did actually put action to where his words were, it blew up in his face. The China trade war, I think, is an example. It like made things worse, and like the bringing back coal is just like psychotically stupid.
Yeah,
Like it's like comically idiotic.
yeah. Here's the issue with bringing jobs like that back. It's they didn't leave for like marginal increases in profit, like small raises in profit. They left because of large increases in profit. They left because these jobs are no longer viable in the United States. It's we have grown accustomed to a standard of living, sort of like ease of living, high minimum wages, where it's no longer viable to do a lot of this menial production work, like automotive factories, glass manufacturing, all of that. I think it was actually Foxconn tried to open a factory in the United States in the last couple of years, and it just didn't work. You can't run basically these slave labor esque indentured servitude factories in the United States because we actually have labor standards, and they will end up overseas. But instead of trying to bring them back, you actually need to find something to replace them that's viable. You can't bring back coal. You need to replace coal. That's why I think the Green New Deal was like sort of the marketing of the Green New Deal fell apart in that it wasn't marketed as a jobs program.
Yeah,
It is absurd. People focus so much on the regulation it provided, the sort of caps on carbon emissions, all of that.
you won't be allowed to eat burgers.
Exactly. But you boil it down to what it actually is, and it is a jobs program. It's like, well, wasn't it millions of jobs, basically?
Yeah, and that's sort of like Democrats have always been very poor salesmen of um, neoliberalism, and that's why they because Bill Clinton was the one who the Clinton era, I should say, popularized the ideas of like learn to code, and that's what displaced coal miners should do, and but they didn't provide anybody with like free. They won't provide people with free education to go to college to learn how to code, and this like contradiction where like they refuse to like put their money where their mouth is and back up anybody materially exposes like their weakness and what's cost them elections.
Exactly, and that's when it comes down to subsidizing college debt. Again, these jobs aren't coming back. You can't force them to come back. Give people the means to go to college, for your college. Trade school. Trade school is perfect. Mechanics, plumbers, electricians, engineers, architects, whatever. Just subsidize those things, and you will start to see our economy reorient itself in a lot of these areas from the stagnant sectors like coal, like manufacturing that have largely left because they're not viable, and instead aim at it like infrastructure.
Yeah,
That's something we really need, and it's something that people can get jobs in pretty easily.
that's not going to happen too. That's the worst part. Like all politics and elections and like stuff, it's going to get increasingly harder and harder to care about because it's quickly going to become all cultural bullshit. Like literally, like when you look at how Ronald Reagan versus Donald Trump did with white Americans with college degrees, the drop off is shocking. Ronald Reagan won like hundreds of counties where bachelor's degrees are the most prominent, but and Trump won like 12 of them, and like this, it's so politics is steering clearly straight towards just a giant cultural divide, and materially, like, parties will probably be the same. Like, none of this is like none of this matters anymore. Is like what I'm really getting at. Like, this is all pure like spectacle and stupidity.
And well, not to be like deterministic, but do you think that is the ultimate outcome of American politics is going to be this split between college education?
Yeah. A lot of people are saying this. Cushbaum, that's like his. It's his leading theory is that the college degree will be the biggest divide, and of course, I think as things get worse and worse, college degrees are going to become increasingly like lower in number. I think, yeah, that's a fair prediction. You already see like men are getting less and less college degrees, and I don't think it's going to be a long time until it starts happening to women too. And like the two parties, the differences between them, like what few differences there are. There's no economic differences. I think that should be made clear. Trump was the closest thing to a difference, and we already saw that it was all just bullshit. It was all fake for the most part. And when he did actually try to do it, it blew up in his face. So obviously, future Republicans are gonna like learn from that. Like they're gonna see, oh, the trade war was really stupid. So I'm not gonna do that. But I'm sure as hell I'm gonna campaign on it and like fake it till I make it. And the political debates or whatever, like it's going to become just shouting matches between like which geriatric rapist you prefer based on what degree you took in undergrad. If you took gender studies, you're gonna like one geriatric rapist over the other. If you took, say, a business degree.
And I guess I have a more positive outlook on the way American politics will evolve. I think that, maybe not think, but I hope that after this, the moment of the Joe Biden candidate is over. I think that we're going to see a lot more candidates like Kamala Harris. It's going to be a lot of the sort of technocratic. I will stand by Kamala Harris is better than Joe Biden. It's a step in the right forward.
Sure, whatever. I don't think it'll make a difference.
I should draw it to this point, but I think a marginal step forward is still a step forward. And I think that you look at Joe Biden, the architect of mass incarceration, with all of his comments, and that he's not a very strong candidate for the modern age. I think we're going to find a lot of people that maybe support similar policies but don't have that background and actually may be able to make better choices than him, which, granted, that's going to end up being like the Pete Buttigieg is running the show, but
They're really selling me on this.
I know.
Okay, I guess, well, that actually raises another question that I had. The neocons that all went to vote for Joe Biden, like your Lincoln Project, your Bill Kristol.
Yeah.
What's you now have to like take a look at how they're going, because they essentially they campaigned for like flipping the Senate and everything. They wanted Democrats to be in power, and the question is, like, did they do that because they want to join the ranks of the Democratic Party and like take that over and have spots and be like Biden's advisors and Kamala's future advisors? Or were they just trying to like punish the Republican Party into like being like, oh, see, you need us, Yale ex-Bush people to still run the show forever until we die, and then our kids are gonna do it. But like, to like, did they do it to like so that the Liz Cheneys of the world could rule the party again and return to like Bush era neoconservatism? Or are neoconservatives back in the Democrats' flanks? Are they going to be calling the shots there? It seems like it's like, and I think that matters quite a bit. I think you need to pay attention to where the Lincoln Project goes to see like what direction the Democratic Party is going to go in. Or don't, because I'm already in the this doesn't matter anymore camp. But
well, honestly, I'm not sure where the Lincoln Project folks are trying to go from here. After seeing them campaign for like Georgia, the Democrats in Georgia, I was kind of, I don't know. I was skeptical that they would be returning to the Republican Party, or think they would instead try and be absorbed into the Democratic Party. And especially after the Capitol riot, I think they were very vocal of Trump and the Republicans. But also with that whole riot and storming the Capitol, they started to find common ground once again with your Mike Pences and your Mitch McConnells and all of that. So I think that sort of with the events of the last couple of weeks and like the blatant disregard for American liberal democracy, you're seeing the coalition once again form of these moderate Republicans who aren't big fans of the Trump presidency and are starting to form ranks around what would basically be again like your George Bush old guard sort of neocon movement.
Yeah, yeah. It's like, you know, it's the Donald question. It's like what
It's Mike Pence getting up and saying, "No, I'm going to certify this election," and suddenly they're on the same side as him again.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, if they take over the Democratic Party, or even if they try to go back to I assume their next goal is going to be like, you know, kick Bernie Sanders while he's down, and like really make sure that like aspect of left populist like can't be resurgent. I don't see. It doesn't seem like. I think it seems like it's over with the Bernie 2020 campaign. Like, at least within the Democratic Party, you know, I think we should always keep our ear to the ground for, you know, new things coming around to support and get behind, and if it's, you know, worthy of our time and efforts. But
I mean, the thing that gives me faith with the Democratic Party right now is the fact.
Jesus Christ.
No, I know what you're thinking. It's the fact that they like bungled the election so hard in the House that the squad and the actual progressive members of the Democratic Party now have a like enough people to swing a vote. Like by withholding their vote, they can actually cripple any Democratic legislation that Pelosi is hoping to pass.
But they already didn't withhold their vote. They all voted for Pelosi.
Yeah, well, Pelosi was going to be speaker anyway. There was no one to challenge her.
Well, okay. Then, you know, you could make the same argument about Biden. Biden was going to be the nominee, like, anyway. He just shrugged at me. He shrugged knowingly, like, as in, like, conceding my point. You know, I want the audience at home.
Do you think Biden wasn't going to be the nominee the whole time? Are you saying that you didn't think the gears were in motion to put Biden as the nominee since the start?
But everybody thought Bernie had a shot after Nevada. Don't give me that. Everybody thought, like, you know, because I think they were never going to play by the rules. But at the same time, if we were able to overcome them and get the votes and win the states, they wouldn't, like, kill Bernie. They would let him run in the general election. And I think what would have been worse is if he did get elected. Well, no, not worse. I think him winning would have been the best outcome. But if he, like, got in there and was unable to do any of his agenda because of the Democrats, because we've already seen Senate Democrats are willing to, like, they destroyed the public option in the Affordable Care Act. Like, Obama wanted a public option there. If there was a public option as early as 2010, I think the Medicare for All debate would be such an easy layup now. Like, you wouldn't even need to, like, debate among Democrats. Like, if we had a public option in 2009, like, people always say the Affordable Care Act is, like, the first step to getting to Medicare for All. Well,
it was.
Yeah.
Some lobbyists decided it wouldn't be, but it was.
Yes, I think Obama was, you know, very evil, and he's going down in history as the most insignificant two-term president because of Trump, which I think is funny. But to give him credit, I guess that bill had the capacity to be a first step, but it. Yeah, sure as shit wasn't.
And I think speaking of Medicare for All and the Affordable Care Act, Bernie Sanders said earlier today, he was in an ad, in a post, he was discussing the midterms, basically. And so looking ahead to 2022. And the fear I think that a lot of Democrats have, and it's a perfectly legitimate fear, is that they are going to get kicked hard in the House, in the Senate. They're going to get swept out of office.
The Senate is... Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. I'll let you pick right back up. But the Senate... The states that are up for grabs in 2022 heavily favor Republicans for the Senate. The Republicans are definitely going to take over in 2022 in the Senate. I think that's guaranteed.
Yeah, and I think that's something worth discussing. But what Bernie was saying about it is Democrats lose seats in the House and Senate when they do not follow through. Whatever Joe Biden campaigned on, he has to follow through. You look at Clinton when he lost the House. It's because he didn't follow through. Obama, devastating loss in the House. It's because the ACA wasn't enough. They didn't actually push the legislation all the way through. It wasn't the full package that they needed. They didn't come through on the promises. And so whatever you think of Joe Biden, I think that it is imperative for the Democratic Party to hold him accountable for the campaign promises he made, and I think they were by no means enough. But if they want him to win, or not win re-election, but if they want him to retain a majority in the House and Senate, he actually has to do what he said he was going to do. Whether that's the public option, $15 minimum wage, relieve college debt, environmental stimulus package, like the whole deal, he has to follow through. And people were commenting to Bernie Sanders that this was revisionism and that it was because the Republicans hated the Affordable Care Act, and that's why Obama lost the House. Same with Clinton. They were saying that he was being blocked by the Republicans, and that's why it was such a devastating loss. But no, Bernie is right about this. Democrats are extraordinarily popular when they have policies that they campaign on and they actually enact them. And they are popular policies that help lots of Americans.
Okay, I guess to like wrap up, sort of like, I might as well get into the conspiracy theory portion of the episode and ask, like, given that we had an entire episode on about how movements seem to go into the Democratic Party to die, you know, like labor, feminism, civil rights, name it, is like the Democratic Party like an op then? Because they suck so hard at enacting policies, and they seem to only shine, like, because, like, you asked this question before, like, what are you going to do, vote for, like, a Republican, you know? Like, it seems to me like their sole purpose is, like, to prevent actual left-wing organizing and things. Because think about what happened now with the Capitol storming and Trump denying the election. They're going to use that to, like, peer pressure you, or like pressure you into voting, guilting you into voting for them again by being like, see, we need to win by a landslide every time, or else they're going to try to deny the results of the election.
Here's
No,
I think that is definitely a valid concern, and what it comes down to is whether or not the Democrats are actually smart or good at politics. What are their intentions are to win.
It's Schrodinger's moron.
They do want to win. The question is whether or not they're going to learn from their mistakes, or if they're going to power through and keep fucking up.
I can't agree with you. I mean, look at, again, I wake up every day and ask myself, does any of this matter? Should I be invested at all in, Democrats and Republicans and all that bullshit, knowing what I know? But they picked the guy that lost South Carolina to Lindsey Graham, one of the most unpopular people in the country, to be their party chairman. Now, you made this point, it's because he was very, very good at fundraising. He got
probably the highest amount of money raised for a Senate campaign ever.
But he still lost, and that raises the question, that's why I think it almost seems like they want to lose. It seems like the Republican Party's function is to administer the will of capital, and the Democrats' function is to serve as ceremonial opposition, and then make the same policies by Republicans become palatable to people. I like a kindler, gentler machine gun hand, to quote Neil Young.
Yeah, well, I think what it comes down to is, again, there's this split in the Democratic Party, and it's an oversimplification, but you have the really old classic Democrats, your Joe Bidens, your Nancy Pelosi's. You're kind of Chuck Schumer. Chuck Schumer's surprisingly open to anything that'll get him votes, so he's game for whatever. But again, it's a lot of these old guard blue dog Democrats, your Joe Manchins, a lot of these people that in any other time would be Republicans.
Yeah, someone should redacted Joe Manchin.
Yeah, but it's all of these people that are essentially a barrier to the newer generation of Democrats. The, again, largely people of color, young men, young women. It's, I know the Democrats like to dress themselves up in diversity, but this new sort of generation that is diverse, I think, does genuinely have more going for them and better intentions than the old guard, and they actually have a lot of better policies. And it's whether or not the sort of Dianne Feinsteins end up continuing their blockade of progress in the party.
I guess we'll see. I don't have a firm... I told you, every day I wake up, I look in the mirror, and, you know, is this what I'm going to do today? You know? But,
I wake up, go to the office, I sue the Obama administration, I go home.
What? What is that a reference to?
That's the governor of Texas, or the Attorney General of Texas. He said in a speech that his job was he gets up, he goes to the office, sues Obama, then goes home.
That's based. I think that brings us to an end here. This was a pretty good episode. I'm sorry. I'm pulling a Joe Biden here. I'm like fumbling my words and like
Yeah, this was a free-form one. It was really a celebration of hitting 1,000 streams. So.
I am not high or drunk, or I've not ingested any substances. I just I don't know what's wrong with me.
Well, thank you to all our listeners.
I have a serious, hopefully it's just mental. It might be a physical problem, though. I don't know.
It's bedtime for Sam. Thank you all for listening.
I locked myself out of my apartment room, bedroom, and nobody could pick the lock.
Yeah.
So I had to, like, force myself in with my shoulder.
Yeah, don't send this to our landlord.
He's a huge fan.
Yeah. So
Well, we can't end on that note. I just told a weird personal story. You need to, like, react to it to make it sound normal. You can't...
Oh, geez, Sam, that was
that was
a real tough one.
You were there. You saw it firsthand. Like, I don't know. We shouldn't take ourselves so seriously. We should have fun with this podcast.
Yeah.
We're just trying to have fun online.
I think it's a good metaphor of the locked door of capital.
Oh, yeah.
Acting as a barrier to the youth who want to enter the room of prosperity. And how, when it comes down to it, those standing in the way may have to be pushed. You have to put down your shoulder and you have to break the lock.
All right, I need a glass of water.
The lock on capital. Yeah. Well, anyway, that's all for this week. Thanks for listening to The Tempest. Once again, feel free to check us out on YouTube.
Oh, is this going on YouTube?
Yeah, this is going on YouTube, but
that was our last week was our last Zoom episode. We're finally done.
That's right.
People did not like it.
That's right. We're back in person, so you don't get to see our faces anymore. That's all, folks.
Bye.